Admiral Zektor stood on the command bridge of the massive warship Dominion's Pride, his 4 arms clasped behind his scaled back. Through the viewport, he watched the blue marble of Earth grow larger. The planet looked so peaceful, so defenseless. It was almost disappointing how easy this conquest would be. "Status report," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had conquered 17 star systems. "All fleet divisions are in position, Admiral," his tactical officer responded. "The Hegemony's 3rd Fleet reports ready. The Consortium's battle groups have completed their deployment. The Alliance's siege platforms are charged and awaiting your command." Zektor allowed himself a rare smile. 347 warships from the galaxy's most powerful civilizations had assembled for this moment. The humans had refused to surrender their technology, their foolish pride sealing their fate. Now they would learn what happened to species that defied the Galactic Council. "Any response from Earth's government?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. "Negative, sir. They maintain radio silence." The Admiral's mandibles clicked in amusement. The humans probably thought ignoring the fleet would make it go away. Such primitive thinking. They had barely achieved faster-than-light travel 50 years ago, while his people had been sailing between stars for millennia. In the tactical pit below, Commander Vexara of the Hegemony studied her displays. The massive octopoid's tentacles danced across multiple control surfaces as she coordinated the fleet's approach vectors. Her species had been the first to demand action against humanity. The humans' rapid technological advancement had worried many in the Council, but Vexara knew better. No species could leap from discovering FTL to challenging the established order in mere decades. "Admiral, we're detecting some activity from Earth's orbital stations," she reported. "They appear to be evacuating?" "Let them run," Zektor said dismissively. "Track the escape vessels, but do not pursue. We want survivors to spread word of what happens here today. Fear is a useful tool for managing the lesser species." Lieutenant Kresh, the youngest officer on the bridge, shifted nervously at his station. This was his first major campaign, and the responsibility weighed on him. His people, the Altarians, had joined the coalition reluctantly. They preferred trade to warfare, but the Council's vote had been unanimous. Humanity posed a threat that needed to be eliminated. "Sir, I'm reading unusual energy signatures from Earth's moon," Kresh said, his voice betraying his uncertainty. "The readings don't match any known human technology in our database." "Probably some mining operation," Commander Vexara interjected before the Admiral could respond. "The humans have several helium-3 extraction facilities there, nothing that poses a threat to our shields." Zektor nodded in agreement. The intelligence reports had been thorough. Earth's military consisted of a handful of patrol craft, some orbital defense platforms, and ground-based missile systems. Primitive weapons that wouldn't even scratch the paint on a modern warship. The real prize was the humans' creativity, their unusual approach to problem-solving that had allowed them to advance so quickly. Once Earth was under Council control, that creativity would be properly channeled to serve the greater galactic good. "Open a channel to the fleet," the Admiral ordered. "All frequencies." The communication system hummed to life, connecting him to every ship in the Armada. Representatives from dozens of species waited for his words, their vessels arranged in perfect formation around Earth. It was a sight that would have broken the will of any rational species. But humans, as everyone knew, were far from rational. "Warriors of the Galactic Council," Zektor began, his voice carrying across the void. "Today we stand on the threshold of victory. The humans have refused our generous offers of peaceful integration. They have spat upon our extended hand of friendship. Their arrogance knows no bounds, but today, that arrogance ends." On the bridge of the Hegemony vessel's Sword of Justice, Captain Thakur listened to the Admiral's speech with satisfaction. His crew of hardened veterans had seen action in numerous conflicts, and they were eager to add Earth to their list of conquests. The humans' defiance had become something of a joke among the fleet. How could such a young species believe they could stand against the combined might of civilizations that had ruled the stars for eons? "Captain, should we charge the main guns?" his weapons officer asked. "Not yet," Thakur replied. "The Admiral wants to give them one last chance to surrender, though I doubt they'll take it. Humans are stubborn creatures." Back on the Dominion's Pride, Admiral Zektor continued his address. "Each of you represents the finest military traditions of your respective civilizations. Together, we are invincible. The humans will learn this truth today, one way or another. Prepare for synchronized jump to final attack positions. Today, we make history." The fleet began to move as one, hundreds of ships adjusting their positions with practiced precision. The smaller corvettes and frigates took up screening positions, while the massive dreadnoughts and battleships formed the core of the formation. The siege platforms, each one capable of cracking a moon, slowly powered up their primary weapons. On Earth, the silence continued. No defensive fleet emerged from hiding, no desperate last-minute negotiations, no pleading for mercy, just silence. "Curious," muttered Science Officer Hexall, her insectoid eyes studying the sensor data. "I'm detecting no panic on the planet's surface. Communication traffic is actually below normal levels. It's as if they don't even know we're here." "They know," Zektor assured her. "They're paralyzed by fear. I've seen it before. Some species simply shut down when faced with inevitable defeat. The humans are learning they are not special, not chosen, not destined for greatness. They are merely another primitive race that overestimated their importance in the galaxy." The Admiral turned to his strategic planning staff, a mix of species that had served together for years. "Once we've secured the planet, I want minimal civilian casualties. The humans will be more useful as laborers than corpses. Their creativity, properly directed, will benefit the Council. Have the occupation forces ready to deploy immediately following the bombardment." "Yes, Admiral," they responded in unison. Through the viewport, Earth continued its slow rotation, blues and whites and browns painting a picture of serenity. Cities sparkled on the night side of the planet, billions of humans going about their daily lives, unaware that their world was about to change forever. Or perhaps they were aware and had simply accepted their fate. Either way, the outcome would be the same. "Admiral," Commander Vexara called out, a note of confusion in her voice. "I'm detecting some anomalous readings from the asteroid belt, several large masses that weren't in our initial surveys." "Mining operations," Zektor said without looking. "The humans have been exploiting their system's resources heavily in recent years. Desperation, most likely. They knew this day would come." But Vexara wasn't satisfied. Something about the readings bothered her. The masses were too uniform, too precisely positioned, and they were generating low-level energy signatures that didn't match any mining equipment she'd ever seen. She made a note to investigate further after the battle, assuming there was anything left to investigate. "Fleet status update," the Admiral requested. "All vessels report ready, sir. Weapons charged, shields at maximum, electronic warfare suites active. The humans won't be able to get a target lock even if they tried." Zektor nodded approvingly. Everything was proceeding according to plan. Hundreds of civilizations had fallen before the Council's might, and Earth would be no different. The humans' rapid advancement had been impressive, even alarming to some, but it meant nothing in the face of overwhelming force and superior technology. "Sir," Lieutenant Kresh spoke up again, his voice more urgent. "The energy signatures from Luna are increasing. Whatever they're doing up there, it's drawing massive amounts of power." "Probably destroying their research data," suggested the tactical officer. "Standard protocol for a defeated enemy. They don't want us to have their scientific advances." It made sense. But something nagged at the back of Zektor's mind. The humans had been too quiet, too calm. Every other species had at least attempted negotiation when faced with annihilation. The humans had simply waited. "Maintain vigilance," he ordered. "But proceed with the plan. Begin final approach. All ships, prepare for synchronized orbital bombardment. Target military installations first, then infrastructure. Leave the population centers for last. Give them time to surrender." The fleet surged forward, drives flaring as they closed the final distance to Earth. 347 of the galaxy's finest warships, crewed by veterans of 100 campaigns, armed with weapons that could shatter continents. Against them stood a single planet, barely out of its stellar cradle, with no visible defenses. "Entering optimal firing range in 60 seconds, the navigation officer announced. "All ships report weapons lock achieved," added the tactical officer. "Ready to fire on your command, Admiral." Zektor stepped forward, his moment of triumph at hand. Another successful campaign, another species brought to heel. The Council would reward him handsomely for this victory. Perhaps he would even be given governance of the Sol system, a fitting capstone to his illustrious career. "Fleet Admiral," the communications officer suddenly announced. "We're receiving a transmission from Earth. Audio only." "Put it through," Zektor commanded, curious to hear humanity's last words. The bridge speakers crackled to life. The voice that emerged was calm, almost conversational. It spoke in perfect galactic standard, with no trace of accent or emotion. "Galactic Council Fleet, this is Earth Defense Command. You are trespassing in sovereign space. You have 60 seconds to reverse course and leave the Sol system. This is your only warning." The bridge erupted in laughter. Even Zektor couldn't suppress his amusement. The sheer audacity of it. Here they sat with enough firepower to turn Earth into radioactive glass, and the humans dared to issue threats. "Should we respond, Admiral?" the communications officer asked through his chuckles. "No need," Zektor said, wiping moisture from his eyes. "Let them maintain their delusions for another—" He checked the countdown. 40 seconds. Then reality will assert itself. But Lieutenant Kresh wasn't laughing. His eyes were fixed on his sensor display, watching as those anomalous energy readings spiked across the system. Luna, the asteroid belt, even from the moons of Jupiter and Saturn. Something was happening. Something big. "Admiral," he began, but Vexara cut him off. "Sir, massive gravitational distortions detected. Multiple sources, they're everywhere." The laughter died on the bridge. Zektor spun to face the main tactical display as it erupted with new contacts. Not dozens. Not hundreds. Thousands. "What in the seven hells?" he breathed. Space itself seemed to ripple and tear as ships emerged from wherever they'd been hiding. But these weren't the crude vessels the intelligence reports had described. These were monsters of metal and purpose, bristling with weapons configurations that defied conventional design philosophy. And at their head, emerging from behind Luna like predators breaking cover, came the Dreadnoughts. The human voice returned, still maddeningly calm. "Your 60 seconds are up. For what it's worth, you should have taken the warning." The bridge of the Dominion's pride fell into absolute silence. Admiral Zektor's 4 hands gripped the command rail as his mind struggled to process what the sensors were showing. Where moments ago there had been empty space, now an entire fleet materialized. Not just any fleet, but ships that defied every known principle of warship design. The human dreadnoughts were massive, easily twice the size of the Council's largest battleships. But it wasn't their size that sent cold fear through Zektor's hearts. It was their design. Where Council ships were elegant, these were brutal. Where Council ships showed their weapons proudly, These monsters seemed to be made entirely of armor plating, with weapons hidden behind retractable ports that now irised open like the eyes of awakening giants. "Tactical analysis now!" Zektor barked, his voice cracking. Commander Vex Ara's tentacles flew across her console. "I'm reading. This can't be right. Admiral, each dreadnought is generating power signatures equivalent to a small star. Their hull composition, it's nothing in our databases. Energy readings suggest some kind of adaptive metamaterial that—" She never finished the sentence. The lead human dreadnought, a kilometer-long behemoth with Terra Invicta painted on its hull, fired. The weapon was unlike anything the Council had encountered. Not a laser, not a plasma bolt, not a kinetic projectile. Space itself seemed to scream as a distortion wave ripped across the void. The hegemony battleship Eternal Supremacy, pride of their fleet, simply ceased. Not destroyed, not vaporized, but unmade at the quantum level, its atoms scattered across dimensions. "Evasive maneuvers!" Zektor screamed. "All ships, scatter pattern Omega!" But the human fleet was already moving. From hidden positions throughout the solar system, thousands of vessels emerged. Sleek destroyers that moved like hunting pack animals, cruisers that bristled with point defense systems, carriers that disgorged swarms of fighters moving in perfect synchronization, and throughout it all those terrible dreadnoughts advanced with inexorable purpose. On the Sword of Justice, Captain Thakur watched his tactical display in horror. The humans weren't just fighting back, they were executing a strategy that must have been years in the planning. Every Council ship found itself surrounded, outmaneuvered, outgunned. "Return fire," he ordered. "All weapons, target the nearest dreadnought." His ship's main guns, weapons that had cracked the defenses of a dozen worlds, fired in perfect sequence. Beams of coherent energy that could pierce mountains struck the human vessel's hull and did nothing. The armor didn't just absorb the energy, it seemed to drink it in, glowing briefly before returning to its dull metallic sheen. "Impossible!" his weapons officer gasped. "The energy readings show their armor is actually growing stronger from our attacks." Before Thakur could respond, the human dreadnought returned fire. Not with one weapon, but with hundreds. Missile ports opened across its hull like pores, releasing a swarm of smart munitions that twisted and danced through space with impossible agility. The Sword of Justice's point defenses, pride of hegemony engineering, managed to stop perhaps a tenth of them. The rest found their marks with surgical precision. Explosions rippled across the ship's hull, but these weren't normal warheads. Each detonation released clouds of nanomachines that began eating through armor and systems with terrifying efficiency. Within seconds, Thakur's mighty warship was being devoured from the outside in. "Abandon ship!" he ordered, but he knew it was too late. The nanomachines had already reached the escape pod bays. Back on the Dominion's Pride, Admiral Zektor watched his fleet dying. Ships that had stood victorious over dozens of worlds were being systematically destroyed by an enemy that fought with technologies that shouldn't exist. The humans weren't just winning, they were making it look easy. "Admiral," Lieutenant Kresh called out, "I'm intercepting human fleet communications. They're not even encrypted." "Put it on!" Zektor ordered desperately. Perhaps understanding their coordination could reveal a weakness. The voices that filled the bridge were calm, professional, almost bored. Fighter pilots called out targets like they were noting items on a shopping list. Capital ship captains coordinated their fire with the casual efficiency of a well-rehearsed dance. And through it all, a central command voice provided updates with infuriating serenity. "Sector 7 clear. Hegemon forces neutralized. Moving to assist Sector 4. "Copy that, Hercules. Be advised, we have runners trying to reach the jump point. Interdictor fields are active, but watch for stragglers." "Terra Command, this is Dreadnought Zeus. The Council flagship is trying to rally their forces. Permission to demonstrate why that's inadvisable?" Granted, Zeus. Make it memorable. Zektor turned to see the massive human dreadnought orienting on his position. Along its spine, panels retracted to reveal a weapon that made his blood freeze. The energy readings were off the scale, showing power draws that would have drained a Council dreadnought's entire reactor output in seconds. But the human ship showed no strain, no power fluctuations. Whatever drove these monsters had reserves beyond imagination. "All power to forward shields," he screamed. "Everything we have." The Dominion's Pride's shield generators screamed in protest as they channeled every available watt of power into a protective barrier. The best defensive technology the Council had to offer, layers of overlapping energy fields that had never been breached. The Zeus fired. A lance of pure white energy crossed the space between ships, and where it touched Zektor's shields, they simply weren't. Not overwhelmed, not overloaded, but negated at a fundamental level. The beam continued on, striking the Dominion's Pride amidships. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the proud warship began to fold in on itself, space-time corrupting around the impact point. Zektor had just enough time to realize the humans had weaponized gravity itself before his command bridge twisted into geometries that three-dimensional space couldn't contain. Across the battlefield, the slaughter continued. Commander Vexara had managed to eject in an escape pod, and from her tiny viewport, she watched the systematic destruction of everything she'd believed about galactic warfare. The humans weren't just more advanced, they were operating on entirely different principles. She saw a Council destroyer attempt to ram a human cruiser in desperation, only for the smaller ship to phase out of reality, letting the destroyer pass harmlessly through before rematerializing and destroying it with contemptuous ease. Fighter craft moved in formations that defied physics, accelerating at rates that should have liquefied their pilots. Unless, she realized with growing horror, they weren't piloted at all. The intelligence had been wrong. Catastrophically wrong. The humans hadn't just discovered FTL 50 years ago, they'd been preparing for this moment. Every piece of technology they'd shown the galaxy had been a deception, a carefully crafted lie to hide their true capabilities. A human fighter noticed her pod and approached. Vexara waited for death, but instead the craft simply waggled its wings and moved on. They weren't even bothering to destroy escape pods. The message was clear. Survivors were wanted, witnesses to carry the tale. The Alliance siege platforms, weapons capable of cracking moons, tried to coordinate their fire on the largest human dreadnought. 20 platforms fired in perfect synchronization, beams of destruction that had ended civilizations. The dreadnought, identified as Prometheus Unbound on its hull, took the hits without attempting to dodge. For a moment, the Alliance commanders felt hope. Surely nothing could withstand that level of firepower. Then the smoke cleared, and Prometheus Unbound remained, completely undamaged. Worse, it seemed to be laughing at them. The retaliation was swift and terrible. The human dreadnought's hull split open like a flowering plant, revealing a core of pure energy. Not a weapon, but something far worse. A miniature star, contained and controlled by technologies that made Council science look like Stone Age scribbling. The dreadnought directed a solar flare across space, washing over the siege platforms. They didn't explode. They melted. Million-ton weapons platforms reduced to slag in seconds, their crews not even having time to scream. The human dreadnought closed its hull and moved on, looking for new targets. On the bridge of his dying corvette, Science Officer Hexal frantically tried to analyze the human technology. Every scan brought new impossibilities. Materials that shifted between states of matter at will, power sources that violated conservation of energy, weapons that attacked the fundamental forces of reality itself. How? He whispered to himself. How did they advance so far so fast? The answer came from an unlikely source. His communication system, damaged and dying, picked up a fragment of human transmission. Not military chatter, but something else. A history lesson, being broadcast on an open channel for any survivor to hear. 50 years ago, when we achieved FTL, we knew you would come. The galaxy's established powers always fear the newcomer. So we prepared. Every scientist, every engineer, every brilliant mind on Earth united with one purpose: survival. We showed you what you expected to see, primitive ships and basic technology, while in secret, we built the tools of our salvation. We studied your technologies through trade and espionage. We learned your weaknesses, your blind spots, your arrogance, and we improved upon everything. Where you had grown complacent with millennia of dominance, we hungered with the desperate creativity of the threatened. You came here expecting to find primitives with delusions of grandeur. Instead, you found a species that had turned fear into innovation, desperation into determination. You found humanity. Hexal's corvette shuddered as human missiles found their mark. As his ship died around him, he couldn't help but appreciate the irony. The Council had created their own doom. By threatening humanity, they had forged Earth into the greatest military power the galaxy had ever seen. The battle, if it could even be called that, was nearing its end. Of the 347 ships that had entered the Sol system, less than 50 remained functional. Most of those were small craft, corvettes, and frigates that the humans seemed to be deliberately allowing to escape. The human fleet moved with terrifying coordination, herding the survivors toward the system's edge. The message was clear: leave and tell others what happened here. The humans wanted the galaxy to know that Earth was no longer a target, but a power to be feared and respected. In the chaos, a few council commanders tried to organize a final stand. The remnants of 3 different fleets attempted to combine their firepower for one last attack on the human positions. They targeted what appeared to be a supply ship, hoping that destroying support vessels might slow the human advance. The supply ship dropped its disguise, revealing itself as another dreadnought. This one bore the name Pacific Resolve, and its response was unlike anything seen before. Instead of weapons, it projected a field of pure force, catching the attacking ships like insects in amber. The Council vessels found themselves frozen in space, unable to move, unable to fire, unable to even self-destruct. Then, with deliberate slowness, the dreadnought began to compress the field. The trapped ships crumpled like paper, their crew's final transmissions cut short as space itself condensed around them. When the field dissipated, nothing remained but perfectly spherical balls of compressed metal, monuments to the folly of underestimating humanity. Lieutenant Kresh had somehow survived the destruction of the Dominion's pride. His escape pod tumbled through space, offering him a panoramic view of the Council fleet's annihilation. He watched numbly as the pride of galactic civilization was reduced to expanding clouds of debris and cooling plasma. A human destroyer approached his pod and Kresh prepared for death, but the ship simply extended a tractor beam, pulling him in. He expected interrogation, torture, perhaps experimentation. Instead, he found himself in a clean medical bay, being treated by human medics who worked with professional efficiency. "Why?" he asked one of them. "Why show mercy now?" The medic, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes, paused in her work. "Because we're not monsters," she said simply. "We didn't want this war. You forced it upon us. But now that we've won, we see no point in unnecessary cruelty. You'll be returned to Council space with the other survivors." "To tell them what happened," Kresh said, understanding dawning. "To tell them that humanity is no longer asking for a place at the table," the medic confirmed. "We're taking it. The galaxy has 2 choices: accept us as equals or face the consequences. Today was a demonstration. Pray your leaders are wise enough to understand the lesson." As she spoke, Kresh could see through a porthole as the human fleet began to reform. The Dreadnoughts moved back into defensive positions around Earth, but now he understood they were just the visible portion of humanity's strength. Who knew how many more ships waited in hidden bases throughout the system? How many weapons remained unveiled? How many technologies had the humans yet to reveal? The Council had come to Sol expecting to crush an upstart species. Instead, they had awakened a sleeping giant, one that had spent 50 years turning paranoia into preparation, fear into focus, isolation into innovation. The galaxy would never be the same. The Grand Council chamber on Nexus Prime had never been so quiet. Representatives from 100 civilizations sat in stunned silence as the holographic recordings played out before them. The Battle of Sol, as historians would later call it, unfolded in merciless detail. Every ship destroyed, every impossible weapon deployed, every assumption shattered. Council Prime Executor Shekton, ancient even by galactic standards, watched the final moments of Admiral Zektor's flagship with what passed for disbelief on her crystalline features. In her 1,000 years of life, she had never witnessed such a complete reversal of fortune. "Turn it off," she finally commanded, her harmonious voice discordant with stress. The recording froze on an image of Earth, now surrounded by its revealed fleet. The human dreadnoughts hung in space like metal gods, their presence a clear message to anyone who might threaten their world. But it was the smaller ships, the thousands of vessels that had hidden throughout the system, that truly conveyed the depth of humanity's preparation. "How many survivors?" Shekton asked. 47 ships returned," reported the hegemony representative, his usual arrogance replaced by naked fear. "Less than 3,000 individuals from a force of over 1 million. The humans were selective in their mercy." Commander Vexara stood in the center of the chamber, still wearing the emergency suit from her escape pod. As the highest-ranking military survivor, she had been chosen to deliver the official report. Her tentacles trembled slightly as she spoke. "Honored counselors, what we witnessed was not a battle. It was a demonstration. The humans allowed us to live solely to deliver a message. They possess technologies we cannot counter, strategies we cannot predict, and most terrifying of all, the will to use them." "Surely you exaggerate," interrupted the Altarian delegate. "No species advances that quickly. It violates every known model of technological progression." Vexara's chromatic skin flushed with anger. "I watched the Eternal Supremacy, our most advanced warship, get erased from existence by a weapon that attacked the quantum foam itself. I saw fighters moving at accelerations that would liquefy any biological pilot, except they needed no pilots at all. I witnessed dreadnoughts shrug off weapons that crack moons as if they were raindrops. There is no exaggeration sufficient to convey the reality of human capabilities." Lieutenant Kresh, standing with the other survivors, raised a trembling hand. "May I address the council?" Shekton nodded, and the young officer stepped forward. His species valued truth above all else, and his words carried weight despite his low rank. "The humans told us something during our captivity. They said they studied us for 50 years. Not just our technology, but our psychology, our politics, our arrogance. They knew we would come for them eventually, so they prepared for every scenario. While we debated whether they were a threat, they were building weapons designed specifically to counter ours." "And these weapons?" the consortium speaker asked. "What exactly did they use?" "Everything," Kresh replied simply. "Weaponized gravity wells, directed solar flares, quantum destabilization beams, adaptive armor that feeds on energy attacks, fighters that phase in and out of our reality, nanomachine swarms that devour ships in seconds. But the worst part? The humans call these their defensive systems. We never saw what they consider offensive weapons." A ripple of fear passed through the chamber. If those horrors were merely defensive, Science Officer Hexall limped forward on damaged legs, his insectoid features drawn with exhaustion. I managed to analyze some of their technology during the battle. The power sources alone defy our understanding. Each dreadnought contains what appears to be a controlled singularity, possibly even a captured microstar. The energy output is orders of magnitude beyond anything in Council space. "How?" demanded the Alliance speaker. "Our scientists say such things are impossible." "Our scientists have grown complacent," Hexall replied bitterly. "We've had the same basic technologies for millennia, making only incremental improvements. The humans approached everything from first principles, unencumbered by our assumptions about what was impossible. They succeeded because they didn't know they were supposed to fail." Shektan raised a crystalline hand for silence. The implications were clear and terrifying. Humanity hadn't just won a battle. They had revealed the Council's fundamental weakness. Centuries of dominance had bred stagnation, while Earth's isolation had fostered innovation. "What do they want?" she asked finally. A new voice echoed through the chamber, transmitted from outside. "Perhaps I can answer that." The main view screen activated, showing a human face. The woman appeared middle-aged by human standards, with silver streaking her dark hair. She wore a simple uniform with no rank insignia, but her bearing suggested authority. "I am Director Sarah Chen, speaking for Earth Defense Command," she said, her voice carrying clearly through the translation systems. "We've been monitoring your session. With your permission, I would like to address the Council directly." Shektan looked around the chamber, seeing no objections, only fear and curiosity. "Speak, Director Chen." "Thank you. First, let me be clear. Humanity has no interest in conquest or revenge. We simply want to exist without threat, to grow without interference, to explore the galaxy without fear of extermination, because we're different. You destroyed our fleet," the hegemony representative accused. "Your fleet came to destroy us," Chen replied calmly. "We defended ourselves. Notice that we allowed survivors. Notice that we treated them with dignity. Notice that we're talking now instead of sending our fleet to your worlds. We chose restraint. Remember that." "What are your terms?" Shektan asked, cutting to the heart of the matter. "Simple. Recognize Earth's sovereignty. Grant humanity full member status in the Galactic Council with all associated rights and protections. Cease all hostile actions against human colonies and vessels. In return, we will share some of our technology, contribute to galactic defense, and help revitalize the scientific stagnation that has gripped Council space." "And if we refuse?" someone called out. Chen's expression hardened. "Then you'll learn what our offensive capabilities look like. The fleet you saw represents perhaps 10% of our military strength. We have weapons we hoped never to use, technologies that make our dreadnoughts look like toys. Do not force us to demonstrate them." The threat hung in the air like a physical presence. Every representative could imagine human fleets appearing above their homeworlds, deploying weapons that turned reality itself into a tool of war. "We need time to discuss this," Shektan said. "You have 72 hours, Chen replied. "After that, we'll assume you've chosen conflict and act accordingly. For what it's worth, we hope you choose wisely. Humanity has much to offer the galaxy if you'll let us." The transmission ended, leaving the Council in chaos. Some called for immediate acceptance of human terms, terrified of further conflict. Others demanded time to rebuild, to find ways to counter human technology. A few even suggested attempting to ally with humanity's enemies, though none could name any. In the end, it was the survivors who swayed the debate. One by one, they stood and shared their experiences. The casual ease with which humanity had destroyed the greatest fleet ever assembled. The technologies that defied understanding. The mercy shown to prisoners, proving humanity capable of both overwhelming force and remarkable restraint. Captain Thakur, who had somehow survived his ship's destruction, spoke last. Half his body was covered in medical gel from human treatments that had saved his life. "I've fought in 37 campaigns," he said slowly. "I've seen civilizations rise and fall, but I've never seen anything like what happened at Sol. They didn't just defeat us. They made it look effortless. And the worst part? I believe they were holding back. If we force another confrontation, there won't be survivors to warn the next fools." The debate raged for hours, but the outcome was inevitable. Fear, that most primal emotion, won out over pride. The vote was called, and for the first time in Council history, it was unanimous. Humanity would be granted full membership, with all the rights and responsibilities that entailed. Director Chen appeared again when informed of the decision. This time she smiled. "Thank you for your wisdom. As a gesture of good faith, we'll begin sharing some of our medical technology immediately. I believe you'll find our advances in regenerative therapy particularly interesting. Welcome to a new era of cooperation." "Director?" Shekton said carefully. "May I ask a question?" "Of course. Why reveal yourselves now? You could have remained hidden, building your strength in secret." Chen's smile turned sad. "Because isolation breeds stagnation as surely as dominance does. We've taken our technology as far as we can alone. To grow further, we need the diverse perspectives of the galactic community. We need your 1,000 different ways of thinking, your 1,000,000 different approaches to problems. Together, we can achieve things neither of us could accomplish alone." "And if we betray this trust," Shekton had to ask, "then you'll discover that everything you've seen was indeed just our defensive systems," Chen said simply. "But I have faith you won't. Fear brought you to our door with warships. Let wisdom guide what happens next." In the weeks that followed, human ships began appearing at Council worlds. Not warships, but cargo vessels carrying medical supplies, scientific equipment, and offers of technological exchange. The Dreadnoughts remained at Sol, silent guardians ensuring no one forgot the lesson learned there. Human scientists attended council conferences, sharing insights that sparked renaissance in fields stagnant for centuries. Human doctors introduced treatments that extended lifespans and cured diseases thought incurable. Human engineers proposed megastructures that would harness the power of stars for peaceful purposes. But always, in the background, was the knowledge of what humanity could do if threatened. The recordings of the Battle of Sol became required viewing at every military academy, a stark reminder that assumptions and arrogance led only to destruction. Commander Vexara, promoted for her survival and accurate reporting, found herself working alongside human military advisors. She learned that the entire human fleet was volunteer-based, citizens who had chosen to defend their world rather than conscripts forced into service. It explained their coordination, their dedication, their willingness to spend decades preparing for a threat that might never come. "We knew you were coming," her human counterpart, Admiral Singh, told her one day. "The moment we achieved FTL and detected the galactic community, we knew. History taught us what happens to the newcomer, the different, the threatening. So we prepared for war while hoping for peace." "All of this in 50 years, Vexara said, still struggling to believe it. 50 years of united purpose, Singh confirmed. Every nation on Earth, every corporation, every brilliant mind working toward survival. We set aside our differences because the alternative was extinction. Fear of you made us strong. Now perhaps friendship can make us wise." Lieutenant Kresh became an ambassador, one of the first non-humans to live on Earth. He walked the streets of humanity's cities, no longer seeing primitives, but a species that had turned existential threat into evolutionary pressure. He studied at their universities, learning that human creativity came from their short lifespans, their desperation to achieve something meaningful in their brief time. He stood one day in the Museum of the Soul Defense, looking at exhibits showing humanity's secret preparation. Children on school trips laughed and pointed at the displays, treating the desperate years as ancient history. For them, the galaxy was full of friends and possibilities, not threats. But in the military sections of the museum, Kresh saw the truth. Weapons that had never been deployed, technologies held in reserve, plans for contingencies that made the Battle of Sol look like a minor skirmish. Humanity had shown mercy, but they had not shown all their cards. The galaxy had learned a valuable lesson. Earth was no longer a target, but a partner. No longer prey, but predator turned protector. The humans took their place in the council, bringing fresh perspectives and revolutionary technologies. Trade flowed, cultures mixed, and a new golden age began. But in the depths of space, around Sol and throughout human territory, the Dreadnoughts maintained their vigil. Silent reminders that humanity's friendship was a choice, not a weakness. That the species which had shocked the galaxy once could do so again if necessary. The Galactic Council had declared victory that day at Sol, confident in their superiority and the inevitability of human submission. They had been right about the victory, wrong about who would claim it. Earth's dreadnoughts had appeared at the perfect moment, turning certain defeat into overwhelming triumph. Now, as human and alien worked side by side to unlock the universe's mysteries, only one question remained. Not whether humanity belonged among the stars, but how far they would rise. The galaxy watched with mixed anticipation and apprehension as Earth's children reached for heights undreamed of. For humanity had learned the greatest lesson of all. In a universe full of ancient powers and established orders, innovation and determination could overcome any odds. They had faced extinction and emerged not just victorious, but transformed. The primitive newcomers had become the teachers, showing the galaxy that stagnation was the true enemy. And in the void between stars, the dreadnoughts waited. Patient, ready, a promise and a warning written in metal and might. Humanity had arrived, and the universe would never be the same.